Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh to Dr. Shawal and our fellow classmates. So, we are from Group 3. We will present the topic of flash flood in urban area in Malaysia. So, I will introduce myself. My name is Nur Izzahanis binti Kamaruzani. My other members are Nafisa Akila binti Aziz and Nur Hidayatul Aina bin Roshidi. So first, I will present the introduction for our topic, which is flash flood in urban area in Malaysia. So as we know, recently Malaysia had to face massive flash floods in certain major cities such as Selangor, Negeri Sembilan, Melaka and Pahang. So the flash flood is the most widespread and destructive hydrometeorological phenomenon faced by Malaysian cities. Flash floods are more frequent, occur in a capital or in urban area than previous years. Flash floods are defined by a sudden increase in water level, a high rate of flow, and a high volume of debris. Flash floods are generated by a combination of factors including rainfall intensity and duration, as well as the sloping of drainage and stream gradients. Flash flooding is becoming a more serious problem in urban areas because of the removal of plants, the pavement and substitution of ground cover with impermeable surface that accelerate runoff, and the installation of drainage facilities that accelerate runoff. So Kuala Lumpur is the capital of Malaysia, is prone to various natural disasters, and the most common of them is flash floods. So the flash floods are mostly due to increased development and increased rainfall intensity. The number of exposed buildings, crowds and commercial premises is growing in line with the urbanization. This may have a negative influence on the socio-economic situation of the city. Due to the position of Kuala Lumpur, which is in the centre of the city, is the confluence of the rivers Gombak and Kelang is a prominent attraction. As the result, floods are common occurrence in the city. One of the flash flood that occur in Malaysia is 1971 massive flash flood incident.
Assalamualaikum and a very good morning to Dr. Shawal and my fellow friends. So today I will explain about the factors of flash flood issue in urban area in Malaysia. So one of the factors is massive development in urban area. Rapid urbanization in metropolitan region is a challenge for urban planners, particularly in terms of comprehending and managing the social and geographical effect of planning policies. Long-term effect of planning rules, such as those governing transportation and land use, may be seen in the urban form, particularly in the street network, which serves as the city's core and influence the flow and pattern of movement. This has an impact on how individuals navigate and traverse the road network. Road expansion and low-density development, for example, can result to an unsustainable urban shape and support an automotive culture through the land use and transportation interaction cycle. This environment fosters mobility behavior that emphasize vehicle access while penalizing people who are careless, such as truck walkers who represent the urban poor and oppressed. When the capacity of both natural and drainage system cannot cope with the amount of rainfall and water discharge inside an urbanized region, urban flooding can happen due to impermeable surfaces and tall structure density. Increased surface runoff flow from heavy rainfall exacerbates urban floods. However, because this sum may continue to rise to cover ongoing and increased expenses of maintaining urban parks, present management approaches will need to change to accommodate this growing financial strain. Malaysia's urbanization rate is anticipated to reach 70% by 2020. Increased demand for clean drinking water, which is in low supply, is one of the key consequences of this rise. Despite this, drinkable water is nevertheless utilized to maintain and clean public parks during the drought. Using drinking water for this goal is both costly and dangerous to a rising metropolitan population's water supply. The huge highway networks, with a road density of 68 inhabitants, which is comparable to North American cities, demonstrate the impact of the past road expansion policies on Kuala Lumpur's urban shape. This strategy is mirrored in the contemporary mobility behaviour of Kuala Lumpur residents who have a car-oriented lifestyle, with personal motorised vehicles accounting for 80% of the mode share. The lack of integration between multiple modes and operators is to blame for the low level of overall transportation, such as commuter trains, MRTs, monorails and buses. The next factor is the weak sewage or drainage system in urban area in Malaysia. We should not blame the rain, but instead look at the root causes of the floods. As it pointed out many times, the government need to upgrade the drainage system in the Klang Valley. Alam Flora's effort to clean up drains are insufficient. There must be a strong commitment from all stakeholders to make Kuala Lumpur and the Klang Valley flood-free. Although the stormwater management and road tunnel SMART was built to mitigate floods, it cannot work effectively if the drainage system is clogged. For years, the media has been highlighting the poor maintenance of the city's drain, which has reduced their flow capacity and caused flash floods. When a former Kuala Lumpur City Hall official recently claimed that some drains in the city only had the capacity to handle half the amount of water they were built to drain away. Although some quarters claim that the drainage system in the city is satisfactory, chronic lack of maintenance has made it less efficient to channel rainwater into the rivers. It was reported that silt, garbage and other obstruction have reduced to carrying capacity of the city's drainage system by up to 50%, and the lack of maintenance will cause more floods in future. They also said the authorities should act now instead of waiting for floods to recur and then try to fix the situation. The public should take the blame for throwing garbage indiscriminately, which has clogged up the drains. It is also reported that the main reason for flooding, despite having SMART, is because the 3 tributaries of Sungai Klang have overflowed their banks. Therefore, we hope that authorities can expedite the projects to build a water catchment area for Sungai Bunos after similar projects were successfully implemented at Sungai Klang and Sungai Gombak. The water catchment area will prevent floods as excess water can be stored in the reservoir. We need a network of drains, retention ponds and underground tunnels to effectively drain away the water. We should not wait for a disaster to happen. There must be a comprehensive plan to tackle the problem.
The next factor is overflowing of the rivers. Rainfall over an extended period, an extended area, can cause major rivers to overflow their banks. The water can cover enormous areas. Downstream areas may be affected when they didn't receive much rain themselves. With large rivers, the process is relatively slow. The rainwater enters the river in many ways. Some rain will fall into the river directly, but that alone doesn't make the river rise high. A lot of rainwater will run off the surface when the soil is saturated or hard. It will flow to small rivers that flow to larger rivers, and these rivers flow into even the larger rivers. So in this way, all the rain that fell in a large area comes together in this one very large river. When there is a lot of rain over a long period, you can see that the river rises gradually as it is fed with water from smaller rivers. So it takes time for all the rainwater to reach the river, but once it is in the river, it has to flow downstream to the sea. Though ancient floods of this magnitude are hard to conceptualize, we are repeatedly exposed to tales of their contemporary brethren and the massive destruction they leave in their wake. Rivers and creeks flood when pulses of rainfall move downstream. This causes water to overtop the channel's bank and spill onto the neighboring floodplain. So the recent floods in Selangor and Kuala Lumpur, which is at urban area, have taken by surprise both governments and people. The transport services have been disrupted, as well as many roads were closed due to the overflow water at the road. So other than that, there is no electricity in most areas because of most of the housing areas had been the water had been rise very high that cut off their electricity. The state capital also lacks food and drinking water, as all the food or drinking water would be flow along with the flood. While the untimely heavy rain can be attributed to a delayed retreat of the monsoon as a part of climate variability, the massive urban flooding is largely an unplanned urbanization problem. The people living along the river always have a risk of life from the overflowing of the rivers. To prevent such a situation, a string dam is built. However, if these dams are not managed properly, they may cause flooding and huge damage. Other than that, there are many regions in the country that face this natural disaster because of the overflowing of rivers. Moreover, it also happened because of the melting of snow. Another reason for floods is when the dam breaks down. And if you look at the coastal areas, the hurricanes and tsunamis are held responsible for causing floods.
Next, I will explain the issue of the flash flood in urban area, which is the surface condition change. So the urban area is the busiest and most productive center in the country. Therefore, almost all the disruptions that take place in it will affect the whole country in one way or another, especially from economic perspective. The danger of flash floods in Kuala Lumpur is closely linked to the reduction of green areas and forests, as well as the replacement of natural surface with roof and concrete, which have limited the rate of water absorption. In the states where Kuala Lumpur is located, land use change is contributed mainly by the increase in urban and built-up areas. This suggests that the effects of urbanization and its rapidity are significantly reflected in this area. And due to the urbanization, surface conditions change a lot, especially the number of plants, soil type, land use, and many other factors that change as the result of the development process. And due to the development process, the water runoff, distribution, and infiltration are affected. The unavoidable consequences of such change are reflected through flooding most of the time. The biggest sufferers of urban floods are residents living in the city and those who come to the city every day for various purposes.
So the first effects of flash flood in urban areas is exposure to injury and infection. Flood waters may contain sharp objects such as glass or metal fragments that can cause injury and lead to infection. Water also can hide trip or slip hazards such as rocks, steps, curbs, tree roots, grass, mud, or other debris. If water is fast moving, these hazards can lead to serious puncture wounds, bone breaks, or even worse ones. A number of infectious diseases, including gastrointestinal infections and hepatitis A, can spread through contact with surfaces contaminated by flood waters. The likelihood of illness increases when flood water contains foul material from overflowing sewerage system or agricultural or even industrial waste. In urban areas, drainage overflow can be a major source of pollution. It picks up potentially harmful substances from roads, factories, gutters, and drains, including oil, household chemicals, and foul material, as well as transfer them to streets and urban watercourses. This water poses risk to human health as it may contain toxins and pathogens such as E. coli and the virus that causes hepatitis A. As we know, the COVID-19 epidemic is still contagious in Malaysia. The number of cases may increase if the displaced population in PPS sit in areas without physical incarceration, which will cause the likelihood for a person to be infected with that COVID-19 virus. So this is of great concern as there are new variants that are more dangerous if that people would be infected with COVID-19. Besides that, a total of relief centers are being prepared nationwide to accommodate up to 1.63 million flood evacuees if necessary for the monsoon season, which started in October and expected to end in March. Therefore, if the people did not have a physical distances at the PPS, it will lead to a high cases at that place. High cases of COVID-19 at that place, and thus the infection will be rapidly influence the people at that place.
Next, I will explain about the effects of flash flood issue in urban area in Malaysia. So, every year, the population of the city grows. As a result, not only are more people affected to flash floods, but also houses, infrastructure, and a wide range of companies and economic activities are affected. Flash floods are modest in size and last only a few minutes. In metropolitan places, however, the influence is never trivial because the city is the epicenter of economic, business, and administrative activity. Even a minor hazard can have a far-reaching impact. Due to the high cost of recovery and the reduction of investment prospect in flood-prone areas, there will be significant social and economic consequences. Floods are a series of destructive events that occur all over the planet, and their consequences may be devastating. Physical destruction, trauma, disrupted lifestyles, and stress are all possible outcomes of a flood. Floods have the largest societal effect over the planet. Flooding may occur at any moment and vary in terms of the impacted region, volume, and duration. Malaysia is located in Southeast Asia, and due to its tropical environment, it receives strong rainfall throughout the year. Flooding is becoming more common during the monsoon period every year, and the consequences are extensive because every year Malaysia has 2 monsoon seasons. Recently, the flash flood that happened in Shah Alam and Klang Valley for the first time is heartbreaking. Over than 2,000 people have been evacuated as a result of flash floods in 7 states, with Klang and Shah Alam among the worst affected areas. Roads were flooded, electrical substations were destroyed, water systems were interrupted, and port operations were delayed. Most of the areas that evacuated that night, including several in Taman Sri Muda Shah Alam, which is near to the Klang River, are still without food and power. The rainfall on Jalan Benteng Kapar in Klang is 360.5 mm according to statistics from the Irrigation and Drainage Department. The country's average rainfall is 202 mm. Because of the weak sewage system, flash flood is commonly happen in big cities. This is resulting to people lose their homes and family members. Authorities must also handle logging practices that have resulted in soil erosion and riverbank collapse due to exploration and riverside regions. When heavy logging operations are carried out on hill slopes, the scenario is similar. The floods are similar of the devastating floods of 2014, which forced thousands of people to leave their home, shut down highways, caused property damage, and resulted in the loss of millions of ringgit. Authorities are being encouraged to evaluate and improve the drainage infrastructure, particularly in urban areas. River deepening projects should also be reconsidered since the Klang River's water storage has already exceeded the threshold, causing a massive water overflow that has harmed the local people.
Next, I will explain the effect of the flash flood in urban area in Malaysia. So as we know, flood danger includes several negative consequences such as structural damage and erosion, property loss, food and water contamination, disruption of socio-economic operation such as transportation and communication, and the damage to agricultural land. So physical and social consequences of disaster are classified, which the physical consequences include the casualties such as death and injuries and the damage to property. Kuala Lumpur is densely packed with the high-rise office, hotel, commercial complex connected by a network of large roadways and the community rail system. Numerous other facilities as well as the utility control center might be impacted, resulting in expenditure associated with displacement, disruption, and physical injury. Residential and business sector also sustain significant losses due to repair costs, cleaning costs, and the damage to garden and house goods. Another sort of loss and destruction that may occur is the loss of value generated in trade and commerce as a result of the interruption caused by flash flood, such as damage to the shop fixture, goods, raw material, and machinery. And some small business may need to close following because of the disaster.
The next solution is maintenance of irrigation system or always service the irrigation system. There should be an efficient system for storing excessive water due to rain because it will prevent the overflowing of water. One of the most important steps is to strengthen the drainage system as well as maintenance the irrigation systems maybe once a month, and because it can avoid the water logging, which will prevent the flash floods from occur. Besides that, the government and citizens must work together to formulate ways to prevent floods. Proper awareness must be spread about the steps to take when floods occur. For example, warning system must be set up so that people get sufficient time to save themselves. In addition, areas that are more likely to have floods must have tall buildings above the flood level, so that the people can go to the upper level to save their life. Other than that, dams must be constructed strongly. The use of cheap materials causes them to break. So, when the dams break, the water will overflow and it will lead to the flash flood, and will lead to a massive flash flood that can damage all the cities. The government must ensure that there is a quality building of that dams in order to prevent the floods from occur. In short, we cannot prevent natural causes like rain and the melting of glaciers. However, we can stop the man-made causes like breaking of dams, poor drainage systems, installing warning systems, and more. Thus, we should take inspiration from countries like Singapore, Singapore has never experienced floods despite having heavy rainfall for most time of the year. So that's all from me. Thank you.
Next, I will explain the solution that provided by the government in order to prevent the flash flood from keep occur in urban area. So the damage caused by the floods in Kuala Lumpur has led to the construction of the stormwater management and road tunnel, which is now in use. At the name that called as a SMART. A smart tunnel is not a complete answer to the problem of flash floods in Kuala Lumpur, but instead it should be used to solve the problem of flash flood in Kuala Lumpur City. It has been open since July 2007 and the area around it has not had any flash floods because of the overflow from the Klang River. This is where Masjid Jami is, as well as Jalan Tun Perak in Dataran Merdeka, and where Kampung Baru is, as well as the Old Court Complex, Jalan Munshi Abdullah and Jalan Melaka. As of April 27, 2009, the smart tunnel had been used more than 70 times to divide flood water from the upper river into the village holding point that could hold 600 meters of water. In this time, there was at least 5 very wet days. This day was May 21st and May 30, 2008. September 4, 2008, March 3, 2009 and March 13, 2009. Many times when the flash flood hit Kuala Lumpur city centre, they can cause billions of dollars worth of damage and destruction of the public property. So SMART has been able to save the Kuala Lumpur city centre from the flood. However, the efforts to stop flooding in Kuala Lumpur is still ongoing because the flooding still happens.
In the conclusion, floods are an unavoidable issue in urbanization. As a result, cooperative ways to address the problem and achieve flood resistance should be employed. However, it is important to consider the uncertainty of prediction findings. For example, water level can be used to check flow concentration. The predicted flow rate should match with the water levels. This difficulty is perhaps considerably larger in tropical parks, particularly in Kuala Lumpur. The flora in tropical parks is less seasonal than that of parks in temperature climes. As a result, park visitors are less acclimated to major changes in flora, such as the arrival of autumn and the mass of falling leaves that people of temperate regions are familiar with. For more than a century, prominent urban parks in Malaysia have been maintained in accordance to the government's objective of making Malaysia the most beautiful garden nation, an image that contrasts with a less obsessively groomed environment.